I'm lucky enough to have both the Nikon 85mm F1.4 and the 105mm F1.4. Both these lenses are incredible pieces of glass that will give you excellent images, but I've always wondered which one of these lenses is better for portraits. I know that I could have tested them out in a controlled situation, but I decided to get out and test them with real people out in the streets. I made the decision to shoot both lenses wide open at f1.4 to really see what they could do. When it came to the camera, I used the Nikon Z9 because I love its eye detection autofocus. This allowed me to concentrate on framing and not have to worry about getting my focus point on the subject's eye. When I am shooting at f1.4, focus is critical, and the Z9 nailed the focus every single shot. Like I mentioned in my Z9 video, I like using the shutter release button for regular autofocus and then switch to the AF button for eye detection autofocus. I captured the images as RAW files and exported them out of Lightroom with the same settings to get the closest possible comparison. Because the lenses are different focal lengths, if I stand in the same spot, I won't get comparable framing of my subjects. So what I tried to do was get 3 different types of shots with each lens. I wanted to get close-up portrait of just the subject's face, I wanted an upper body image, and I wanted a whole length portrait. I couldn't always get to exactly the same position, but I tried to get similar framing for each shot. First thing about both of these lenses is that they are both really sharp, and these images help to illustrate the differences when it comes to portraits. I realized that these two images are not captured from exactly the same angle, as I was in a slightly different position when capturing the two photos. However, there are some differences. The colors with the 85mm seem a bit more punchier than the 105. Remember that the raw files I captured were exported with the same settings. You can see the same thing when we zoom in on the eye and look at the color of the eye and the reflection of some buildings, me with my camera, and some blue sky. The color and contrast looks to be better for the 85mm. Of course, this can be adjusted with your photo editing software, but it is something to take note of. When it comes to sharpness, check out these amazing eyebrows. As I already mentioned, both these lenses will produce incredibly sharp images, and here is evidence of that. Because the 105 is a longer focal length, objects behind your subject will be slightly larger in your images. In this example, you can see that the metal yellow and black drum in the background behind the subject appears larger when captured with the 105mm lens. The same goes for all the objects in the background. They will look larger with the longer focal length. Let's take a look at this part of the building behind my subject. My position has changed a little, so it's slightly different position in the two images. The longer focal length with the same aperture, the blurrier the background. So you can see that the background with the 105mm is blurrier than the 85mm. The 85mm has some defining vertical lines, while the 105mm turns those into blur. And when it comes to background blur, I found the greatest difference between the two lenses was when I captured full-length portraits. In this example, the backgrounds are again not completely lined up, but you can see the difference. When you look at some of the messy items in the background, they are blurrier using the 105mm compared to the 85mm, even at this magnification. Let's look closer and see. There's definitely more definition in the background structure with the 85mm when compared to the 105mm. These images show another slight difference between the two lenses when it comes to background. Look at the out-of-focus lights, also known as bokeh, in the background behind the subject. The blobs of light are larger with the 105mm lens, and this makes sense because the diameter of f1.4 aperture on a 105mm lens is 75mm wide, while it is only 61mm on an 85mm lens. This larger opening creates a larger blob of out-of-focus light in the background. The next factor I want to talk about is what I call usability. I love the size of the 85mm lens as it is quite a bit smaller than the 105mm. The 85mm is more compact, and it is actually 60% of the total weight of the 105mm. It weighs in at 595 grams, while the 105mm is just under a kilo at 985 grams. The 85mm can focus down to 0.85 meters, which is about 3 feet, while the 105mm focuses down to 1 meter or 3.3 feet. However, because of the longer focal length, the 105 actually has a slightly larger reproduction ratio of 0.13 times versus 0.12 times for the 85mm. You can see that the image on the left captured with the 105mm lens at its closest focusing distance gives you a more magnified image than the image on the right captured at the closest focusing distance of the 85mm. Not only that, but take a closer look at the blur of the subject's out of focus eye on the left side of the frame. Looking at the eyelashes, you can see at the closest focusing distance of both lenses, the 105mm has slightly more blur. Overall, let me just say that both lenses are amazing for portraits. You can't go wrong with either one. I love the background blur of both lenses, but just know that you will get a little bit more out of focus backgrounds with the 105, especially with full-length portraits. So if that is the deciding factor, then maybe the 105mm is for you. However, the 85 seems to have a bit punchier colors than the 105. Maybe that was just my lens, but it's something that I noticed. One of my favorite things about the 85mm is that it is quite a lot smaller and lighter, so maybe that is what you want. Finally, the 105mm costs about 30% more than the 85mm, so that could factor into your decision. Are there other ways you would like me to compare these two lenses? Please let me know in the comments. If you like the content I'm creating, please consider subscribing. Thanks so much.